So good evening, everybody. Welcome to Salt Talks. We are tonight going to be looking at the stable account. This whole month, we've been looking at what happens when we're gone. How do we plan for when we're gone? There's so many um, different topics, different items we have to plan, not only for today currently, but when we are no longer here, that transition for our child for when we leave, into that, they're in that adulthood. We're trying to make it smoother for when we are no longer here as well. So stable account is part of that. We've been talking about guardianship all month. So tonight we're going to be talking about the stable account, and then next week we're going to follow up with a special needs trust. They do work together, and you'll find out more about that next week as well. So we are recording tonight just to give so you're aware while we're recording. You can turn off your video if you want so that you're not recorded, just for your privacy. So I am going to turn it over. We have Elena Bowers here. She is with the stable account. Now, we've had a presentation, Elena, every year since the stable account became active. At least once a year, we've talked about the stable account. Since it first came on the scene a number of years ago. So I welcome you. Thank you for coming tonight and speaking to us. And I'm going to just go ahead and turn it over to you. And questions, everybody that has a question as we go, I mean, questions arise. We know that's going to happen. You can put it in the chat box, and we'll be watching it, and we can take them at the end. So Elena can get through the presentation, but I'll let her determine that as we go.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Patty.
Thank you.
Great intro, just to speak about how this fits into the whole, planning of guardian and estate planning and special needs trust. Our program, as Patty mentioned, is a very complementary tool to the whole process, the whole plan of caring for a loved one, especially every chapter of their life, of the new challenge you have to face. But we have account holders of all ages. We have a lot of families who have learned about stable account when their child is very young. And then down the road, when they turn 18 or when they turn 20, they decide that it's time to open the account, which is, the most important thing. So it's important to know that at any time during your loved one's life, it's good to look into what stable account is, the impact of it. So that's what we're going to be learning about today. But special needs trusts are a great tool. We work with some great attorneys across the state that specialize in estate planning, guardianship, and all of that as well. So, but today is all about stable account, which is a wonderful program. We have a slideshow, and I'm actually going to share my screen. We tested this earlier. So let's see if this works again. I think we're here. All good? All right, perfect. So our slide deck today is going to be showcasing really all the big points about our program. So enrollments, eligibility. Eligibility is obviously the individual living with the disability, but it also can allow family members, guardians, rep payees, organizations to also open the account as well. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then the most important thing is account management and the impact of the funds as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so as Patty mentioned, our program has been administered by the Ohio Treasurer's Office since 2016. We were the first state to launch an ABLE program after the Achieving a Better Life Experience Act was passed in 2014. That act was a result of over 10 years of grassroots efforts across the whole country. Self-advocates, families, legislators, groups came together, and they wanted to make a change. And the reason that the ABLE Act was so successful in passing is because currently, if an individual is receiving benefits such as SSI or Medicaid, they have to be very mindful of their monthly asset limits. If you're receiving SSI, you cannot go over $2,000 each month. So if you're receiving that monthly income from SSI, or you're working part-time, or your parents give you money and you're on those benefits, you are not really at this point, before 2014, you weren't allowed to save that additional money. So the ABLE Act is an act that was passed that allows every state to implement their own ABLE program. Ohio's ABLE program is called Stable, and ABLE accounts across the country, because I know we might have some folks that are listening that don't live in Ohio, but there are currently 47 ABLE programs. Ohio's ABLE program is actually a national program. So if you don't live in the state of Ohio, you can still go to stableaccount.com and open an account. But ABLE accounts essentially are savings and investment accounts that allow individuals to save money without it impacting their eligibility for certain means tested benefits. Those two common ones that we see are SSI and Medicaid. ABLE accounts are very similar to a 529 college savings plan. Those are obviously also administered by each state. So if a family has set up a 529 college savings plan for their loved one, and down the road, they're not able to use those funds for education or college, they're able to use those funds and roll those into an ABLE account or a stable account. Very similar to a checking account where you can deposit money into the account, take money out of the account. And as Patty mentioned, special needs trusts, they're they're set up very differently than stable accounts, but they're managed by great attorney groups. Those are definitely have different functions. And obviously next week you'll learn more about that, or I forget when you said, Patty, when that is, but you'll have the chance to learn the details of the setting up of those accounts, the management of those accounts as well, and actually how those can be used very well with stable accounts. So Stable, as I mentioned, is Ohio's ABLE plan and program. We are a national plan and program. We are very close to surpassing 40,000 accounts, which is a huge accomplishment because that means that there are over 40,000 individuals that are able to save way more money than they've ever historically been able to before. We launched in 2016, and we are the first and the most used ABLE plan in the country. So this is our very small team. We're with the Ohio Treasurer's Office. So our day-to-day really is just, targeting and focusing on providers, groups, school districts, groups just like this group tonight, and medical providers. All 88 county board of DDs in the state of Ohio have been so supportive of this program since the launch. So we try to find ways to connect directly to families and individuals, and that's been so successful through a lot of the great providers and family support groups across the state of Ohio. So we're really thankful for that. And we are just a piece of the puzzle that's going to improve a family and individual's life. Throughout their time, they're going to learn about benefits. They're going to be figuring out school. They're going to be figuring out their, living situation when they're an adult. So we're just part of that process. But this program also empowers a lot of young adults to work. It allows them to save their paycheck and still keep their benefits. So we're really crucial at that transition time as well, which is really exciting to be part of this tonight to talk about that feature as well. So the benefits of stable account is the ownership, the self-esteem, and the financial independence. So we know a lot of account holders who are, they're young adults or they're working adults, and they're able to go directly to our website and open the account themselves. If they're unable to do that based on a condition, or they need mom and dad's help, or they're living in a situation where they need someone else to open the account for them, there's options for that as well. But what we've seen, and it's so empowering to see, is there are a lot of account holders that are working and they have the account directly in their name. So it's owned by the individual living with the disability. It helps families with the financial planning process, allows them to have the peace of mind knowing that the stable account is an account that they can contribute into over time, whether they're using the money for day-to-day expenses or they're maxing out each year. And in 5 years, they're going to have a large sum of money that they can rely on for years to come. We've seen a lot of different situations and stories, but the end goal is the same, of course, and that is the financial independence. Obviously, if somebody is on SSI today, they know that there is still that rule with the asset and the resource limit. So if they have a stable account, they can still receive their benefits each month. They can also work in some capacity. if they're able to, and then they can contribute those additional funds into the stable accounts. And those funds can grow over time, and they are completely protected from their eligibility being looked at for those benefits. So for someone to open an account, all ABLE programs across the country have this rule, and it is that the individual living with the disability must have had that diagnosis or disorder occur before they turned 26. So that doesn't mean you have to be under the age of 26. It's just that if you had the disability before 26, and that obviously is done through different ways. We do have an eligibility quiz on our website, but when you go through the enrollment process, we do not require any type of documentation, medical documentation to be sent in. But if you are curious if you're eligible, we do have a quiz online. And then the second piece is if your disability or disorder also allows you to be eligible to receive those means tested benefits that we talked about earlier. So SSI or SSDI. We do have a link on our website, and obviously anyone can Google the Social Security Administration website to learn a little bit more about those types of benefits. They do have a list of compassionate allowances conditions on their website that allows you to see if you would be eligible for those benefits because of your disability. SSDI, as we know, is more short-term disability or insurance. Medicaid is administered by the Ohio Medicaid office as well. So our office is completely separate from the Social Security Administration and Ohio Medicaid's office as well, but we still have resources online that you can look into for that as well. Self-certification is a link that's sort of directly with eligibility for benefits. If you're curious about if your diagnosis or disorder would allow you to be on benefits, there's information about being the self-certification piece of it as well. Our website is another spot where you can enroll into the program. It's actually the only spot that you can open an account. So we really advocate for the online enrollment because if you have all of the qualifications for the identification process, it can take less than 15 minutes. We do have a paper process online. That usually is, a kind of a plan B, if you will say, for people that possibly want to have more documentation. If a provider group would prefer to do those things via the paper route. But we do advocate for online enrollment because as soon as the account is opened, you'll get an email and it'll have a link directly to your accounts and you'll be able to see the dashboard. We really are proud of our back-end piece of it. It's accessibly friendly. We have a lot of great assistance. Our customer service group is fantastic. They can help you along the way as well. So we definitely don't want anybody to be missing out on the opportunity to enroll online as well. So there's other options there. For anyone that opens an account, there is a $25 minimum opening deposit required. It's your money. You can obviously deposit more than $25, but I will mention that as of April 2024, any new account that's opened by an Ohioan will receive a $25 match as soon as the account is opened. So essentially, you're getting a $25 match for opening the account as long as you put in at least $25. That $25 obviously is able to be used in any way you'd like, but it is another way that it can cover the annual cost of the account, which we'll get to in a little bit as well. So that's a new incentive we launched this month, we're really proud of, and that is just for Ohioans only. So enrollment is could be done by two different people. So the individual that is eligible to open the account is based on this piece right here. So the funds in the account, the beneficiary on the account is the person living with the disability. So that person can go to our website and open the account directly if they're able to do that. If at any point they need assistance, as I mentioned, they can call our customer service line. Our customer service line can pull up exactly what they're looking at and provide some assistance. But in some situations, that individual still needs somebody to oversee the account management, help with contributions, help with spending. So we've created a new way, an updated way for those authorized legal representatives to have the opportunity to do that. So this is a quick list of those types of individuals that could potentially open an account on behalf of the person with the disability. So, parent, sibling, spouse, legal guardian, Social Security rep payee. Our website has a lot of information about that process, and we encourage those individuals to learn a little bit more about that as well. If you are a parent, or if you're a grandmother or a guardian, and the individual with the disability is under the age of 18, they would still need to have somebody, an ALR, to open the account. So if there's a mom on the webinar right now and they've got a daughter that is 14 years old, and you think that she would benefit from a Stable account, feel free to learn a little bit more about serving as an ALR. You can open the account on behalf of someone under the age of 18. They would just require to do the identification process for you. If that person or your daughter is 18, she turns 18 and she's able to manage the account herself, then the account would then be transferred to her. But we've made it an easier way for ALRs to open the account and manage the account a little bit more efficiently, which we're really, really proud of. So once the account is created, there's a few different ways you can deposit funds into the account. You can do an electronic funds transfer. So if you have an external established checking or savings account, or if mom and dad do, you can link accounts and deposit money that way, just as you would in any other typical checking or savings account. You can mail in a check and our account manager would deposit it for you into the account. And then our third way, which we did a little tweaking and updating to that this summer, is our direct deposit piece. So currently, if you are a working individual and whether you work part-time or full-time, you can actually have your paycheck be directly deposited into your Stable account. It is done through a very easy process. This is actually what it looks like online. So this is an example. Let's say Nicole Miller works at Montgomery County Auditor's Office. She can actually print this off and give it directly to her employer, her HR department, and then they would link it that way. So there's a more efficient way that individuals who are working can receive their funds quickly right in their Stable accounts. We also talk about direct deposit because a lot of parents currently have direct deposit set up where their percentage of their paycheck might go into a 529 plan, their college savings plan. I work for the state of Ohio, and I actually know some employees that have their paycheck percentage going into their child's 529 college savings plan. So this is another way that working parents, guardians, grandma, anyone really can directly deposit part of their funds into their loved one's Stable account as well. In addition to the direct deposit with paycheck, we also have an update to SSI funds. So if you're receiving SSI each month electronically, you can actually go into your Stable account and have it directly deposited. You would link your direct deposit process from your SSI into your Stable account. So if you're receiving SSI each month, you can actually have that go right into your Stable account as well, which is a new update as of this summer. For 2024, the contribution limits did go up a little bit. So if you open your account tomorrow, I don't have a screen of this, but on your portal, on your dashboard, you're going to see your contribution amounts. So if you want to max out for 2024, the general contribution for 2024 is $18,000, and that is from all sources. So sources could be if you're receiving SSI, if mom and dad are giving you money, if you're working a little bit, as long as it's below that $18,000, that is considered the general contribution amount. If you are working more than that general contribution amount, you can actually contribute more due to the Able to Work initiative. And that allows you to max out of that $18,000 plus any wages up to an additional $14,580. So that means that if you're working, you can contribute enough to make it be $13,580 for 2024. So if mom and dad open an account for their child tomorrow, and each year they're going to max out that $18,000, this does go up a little bit each year, but let's say it's $18,000 next year as well. And in 5 years, you're going to have a lot of money in that account. So that's another way that a lot of families and individuals who are independent that are making those contributions can rely on those funds over time. But in a lot of cases, you can use your Stable account funds on day-to-day expenses as well, which we'll talk about as well. And then the account itself has a lifetime balance limit of 541,000. I think this is the same amount as the 529 college savings plan, but these amounts are for all able programs as well. On your dashboard, it's also going to notify you of where you're at with contributions for the year. There's like a little bar graph to show you, okay, you've maxed out 18,000. Now your new contributions could be your Able to Work initiative as well. And then the system will automatically notify you if you are making excessive contributions as well. But any contribution you make in your stable account, whether you have the $18,000 or in 5 years you have, $40,000, SSI and Medicaid, they do not look at those funds and think you have too much money, we're going to take away your benefits. That's why stable account exists. It's a protected account that you can make contributions into, and those funds are completely protected and able to be used on qualified disability expenses. Another source is that gifting page. So I always feel like I always like tell the story of grandma giving you money, but let's say grandma wants to give you, $1,000 for graduation. You can actually have family members, whoever, make contributions into your stable account through our gifting page. So that is a source. So let's say that, let's say Travis, this is Travis, he works at Pickaway County Board of DD. Let's say that Travis is working and tomorrow he's going to contribute $17,000. And let's say grandma's going to contribute $1,000. He would max out at that 18,000 general contribution. But because he works, he's able to obviously put more of his paycheck into that as well, which he does, which is awesome. So we do have another way that people can make contributions into the account as well. You would share this directly from your portal. You could send it out via email. It's kind of like GoFundMe, put on social media as well. So the account, as I mentioned, is a savings and investment account. When you create the account and you make contributions, the portal is going to ask you how you want to disperse your funds. So we have a few different options. Our bank safe option is obviously, as it shows, 100% bank safe. We call this like our super savings account. It's getting a really good return right now, but about 75% of our account holders choose the bank safe option. It's just a normal savings account. But if you do want to look into the investment options, we do have 4 Vanguard mutual funds that you can choose from. Our website has great information about past performance, information about what these investment options mean. We do encourage families and individuals to do their own research about what investment options look like, what's best for your situation. At any time throughout the duration of having a stable account, you're able to change the way that your money is dispersed within the accounts. I think it's about 2 to 3 times per year. But if you're unsure about the investment options and you want to create the account and just start making general contributions, it will default into the bank safe option, which is still a great option as well. So biggest question is, well, what can I spend my stable funds on? We take the terminology of qualified disability expenses basically from all ABLE programs. All ABLE programs across the country basically use the same terminology. When the ABLE Account Act was passed, that was one of the biggest questions of, okay, obviously these individuals are now able to save a lot more money. It's going to help improve their life. What does that look like? And so we just say that it must relate to the disability, help maintain and improve their health, independence, or quality of life. These are just some big icons that we like to showcase of what that is. Obviously, if someone is working, their paycheck is going to go towards these basic living expenses, right? Housing and rent, transportation, health and wellness, legal fees. If mom and dad are contributing to the stable account, they might think, okay, we're going to put money in over a couple of years, and we're going to be able to use those funds on a group home setting or an ICF or long-term planning. So really anything that's going to improve the life, you can use your funds on. One icon that's not on here is a palm tree, because we get so many questions about, can I use it on vacation? And the answer is absolutely you can. If you're putting your paycheck in your stable account, your paycheck should be used on what's going to make you happy, right? And so a lot of our account holders use it on vacations. They use it on their group home is going to Cedar Point for the day and they want to buy a ticket, or they want to use it on dinner, or they want to use it on something that's going to, improve their life. And so that's another thing that we like to mention, is that anything that is going to make your day to day easier, bring you happiness, you can use your funds on. So then we get a lot of questions of, well, what can I not use my funds on? And we don't have a clear answer for that, but we will say that the IRS does oversee all ABLE programs, all financial institutions. And if for some reason somebody's account is going through an audit, which has never happened in our program history, but if for some reason the IRS might look at a transaction and say, you use your account at this place, or you use it for this, you might be subject to a fine just for that transaction. As I mentioned, it's never happened in our program history, but do be mindful of your spending. And we do have some great ways to track your expenses as well. So you can spend from the account different ways. If you have an established savings or a checking account, you can transfer money out into that account. Be mindful of those transaction records, of course. You can pay bills with a third-party check. So our account manager would mail you the check and you could write the check out. That's obviously a great way to keep record of expenses. And then our third piece, which we are most proud of, is our loadable Visa card. So this is an optional card. It's a loadable debit card that is linked to the account, but not directly linked to the account. So this is a way that individuals, as I mentioned, can use those funds on day-to-day expenses. You can make online purchases. You can use the Visa card at Cedar Point, at the zoo, at Walmart, at Amazon. And there is a way that you can track on the back end as well. So there's a lot of great bells and whistles for protections. But most importantly, it's the best way that you can use your funds more efficiently. So if you have $20,000 in your stable account and you want to put $200 on your Visa card, you would have to do a transfer. And in about 3 to 5 days, the funds would then appear on the Visa card. So it's a great way for families to slowly help their loved one learn about financial independence. They can give them the card and say, hey, you've got $200 on this card. And on the back end, they can see where the money is being spent. As I mentioned, it's also a great way to track expenses. In the situation that you might want to keep track of your records, this is the easiest way to do that as well. And there's no fee. So if you live in Ohio, there's no fee associated with the Visa card. As I mentioned, we are a national program. So some of our partner states have also waived the Visa card, and I wish I knew them off the top of my head, but in general, there is no cost for Ohioans to have the Visa card. If you live out of the state of Ohio, there might be a small fee associated with that. So here's just a kind of a quick slide about stable account and special needs trust and how they really go very well together. They're very much complementary tools. A lot of families that we've met that have created a special needs trust, that is obviously done privately through an attorney group, estate planner, special needs trust attorney. There's some awesome ones in the state of Ohio that do a lot of great advocacy, outreach, and usually they speak about stable account, which is awesome for our program because you're able to take money out of a special needs trust and put it into a stable account. And then once the money is in a stable account, you can obviously use it on day-to-day expenses, a little bit more broader spending power. But special needs trusts are a little different. They can accept unlimited amounts of cash and non-cash assets. And I think that a lot of families might set up a special needs trust and kind of rely on that for a longer term goal, where a stable account is more of that day to day, but they work very well together. And as Patty mentioned, the next presentation about special needs trust, they will get in the details about everything related to special needs trust, the tax information about that, who can administer it, who can open that out and open that up. So really great information about that. And then if there's any, I don't know who's leading this, but we do work with some special needs trust attorneys around Ohio. So I can always provide that information to Patty, depending on where the community lives. But there's some great ones that really know the ins and outs of estate planning as well. All right. So Another important information, another piece about this is what happens to the account if the account holder passes away. So if the account holder passes away, the account will go directly to the account holder's estate. The estate administrator will then notify our team, customer service, so that they can get access to the account. And they obviously would have to provide important information about that. If the account holder does not have a will, then the account will go through the normal probate court process, which that is completely separate from our office. Anyone that has ever gone through the probate court process knows that could be a lengthy process just to get access to the estate and management of those funds as well. Simple process on that end. Another thing to mention is the Medicaid estate recovery. So if somebody is receiving Medicaid services and they have assets in any case, they have a house or they have a checking account or a savings account, Medicaid could put a claim on the assets. This is called a Medicaid payback. This is for every state. I think every state has their own individual Medicaid estate recovery process, but for the state of Ohio specifically, it's very similar to how other states operate as well. So if let's say that my daughter is 14 years old and she has a stable account and she's had a stable account for 10 years and she's receiving Medicaid services for 2 years and she passes away, Medicaid can only take a look at the funds in the account that they were covering for the 2 years. They cannot look at the entire balance of the account. So there's a lot of protections there for stable account, which is great. Also, the person that's overseeing the estate can also use the funds in the stable account on outstanding bills. They can pay for outstanding bills that are going to, clean up the estate. They can also pay for funeral, burial expenses, and they can also plan ahead of time for hospice situations as well. So that means that there's a lot of things that the estate holder can do before Medicaid can touch the money. Some states have worked on legislation to eliminate Medicaid from touching any money in any ABLE accounts, and some states have been successful with that. Ohio has not gone through that yet, but I know that there is some conversation about protecting funds in a stable account from the Medicaid payback process. But it is something to mention just if somebody is receiving Medicaid and they also have a stable account as well. I know that in some presentations we've done, a lot of families have asked me, oh, well, I heard that all the money goes back to the state of Ohio. And we just want to make sure that individuals are aware that that is definitely not the case. Obviously, if somebody is receiving Medicaid services, they could be subject to that payback process. But as I mentioned, there are protections put in place as well. And Ohio Medicaid website, Ohio Medicaid is completely separate from the Ohio Treasurer's Office, but they have a lot of information about the estate recovery that they do as well on their website. So we encourage families to take a look at that as well. We did lower our fees for 2024, which is wonderful. So as I mentioned, that Ohio incentive that we launched this month, if you create an account tomorrow, you're going to be given back $25 as our match program. So that $25 could easily cover your annual fee for the year, and then you'd have some money left over as well. So for Ohio residents, you're charged quarterly, $375 quarterly to the account. So that would be $15 a year. And then all other states, we lowered our fees as well. And so it's $27 per year, very low minimal cost for having an account. And then the asset-based fees are listed here as well. And here's our great number to the customer service line. So if you're on our website, if you're on the enrollment page and you're confused about a step, or you want some more information about that process, or if you've opened an account and you're locked out or you're trying to get access to your funds, please call our customer service line. They are amazing. There's a lot of things set up for protection, for security. We have access to assistance if somebody does speak a language other than English. And we also have a way that somebody could call in if they need assistance with American Sign Language as well. So we're really proud of our customer service group because we want to make sure that anybody eligible for an account has the ability to open an account and manage the account if they're able to do that. So we're really proud of our back end side of that. And then our website has so much more than I could mention in the time that I've been on this call. We have a video, about a 2-minute video right on our landing page that we made last summer with our intern that we're proud of. So that's kind of just an overview of our program. But we are, as I mentioned, with the Ohio Treasurer's Office. And so we've been working on some testimonial pieces and some storytelling pieces that we put out on our social media. So our social media will sometimes showcase different account holders and what they're able to use their funds on. We're always looking for testimonials. We feel that that is the best way to share the story, the success of the story, especially from a family's perspective as well. And there's some resources on our website as well. As I mentioned, the Social Security Administration website, Able Today and the Able National Resource Center are other two links that do a phenomenal job at putting out webinars. They do some collaborative work with different agencies across the state of Ohio as well. So, and also the country. So our website is a great place to learn even more about the impact of this program. So I did see some questions pop up, but I have not read them yet. So I don't know if Patty, if you want to
Mhm.
take over, but thank you
Yeah,
so much. And I'm definitely around for any other questions. And
I'll read them. I'll keep your presentation up because I think we can go back to the slide that's specifically on some of the questions. So
okay.
the first couple questions we want that came up. Let's see, I'm going to try to group them as best I can. And we're talking about when the child passes away or the account holder, the parent passes away. So what happens to the money if your child passes away unexpectedly is one question. And then let's see here. And what happens if the parent or the payee passes away suddenly, not the individual, but and you mentioned the probate. So is that, you know, how do they get around that? I guess how they get around each one of those circumstances, whether the child passes away or the parent or the account, the one managing the account passes away.
Okay. Good question. So let's say that my daughter's 20 years old and she has a stable account, and I'm the ALR. I'm the authorized legal representative for her stable account because she was unable to manage the account herself and she passes away. Because I'm already the authorized legal representative, I would then call our stable account customer service, and I don't really need access to the account because I already have access to the account being the ALR. Then I would go through the normal probate court process, which I really don't know how that fits into if somebody's already the ALR, whether they're the guardian or the parent. But let's say that I'm the parent and I'm not the ALR and she has the account just on her own. I would have to go through the probate court to basically prove that I am the person that would get access to the estate. So that is done if you're, the parent, or if you're I know in some situations, if you are, a daughter or a son, if you're basically, trying to get access to the estate to take care of the estate, there's things you have to go through to prove to the probate court who you say you are. And that is done obviously through whatever probate court county you live in. But because stable account is an asset, it would have to go through the probate court process. But in terms of if there's, I guess the second question would be is if the child dies or the account holder dies and there's nobody to oversee the account and there's nobody left to the estate. That's a great question. I don't know that process because that's kind of done through the probate court process. But whoever is trying to get access to the account, they would have to get access to the account through the probate court.
So if the child or if the parent, let me just go back again. If the parent passes away, the child may not have access to the account immediately, or they will have access to the account,
So
like the individual's disability.
if the child passes away, or if the
No,
parent
the
passes.
parent, yeah.
So if the parent passes away and they're the ALR of the account, then the child is it's almost like who oversees the account then? It's a great question. I guess it would be, let's say in this situation, whoever is trying to help out, I guess, would have to just go through the probate court. I know it's a case by case situation, but if there's another person that could serve as the ALR, they would then have to go through the probate court to get access to the stable account to prove that who they say they are. If that child lives in a group home setting, or if they're in a residential home setting, like my uncle, for example, he's in his 70s. He lives in a group home setting in ICF, and his brother, my other uncle, is his legal guardian. If he were to pass away, who would take over for Uncle Bill, right? I would probably look into that, because, you know, I would be somebody that the probate court could look into and say, okay, she would have the right qualifications to be his new legal guardian. And that's done through the probate court. And then once that's assigned to me, I could get access to Uncle Bill's stable accounts. So hopefully that was answered. I know that sometimes it is a tricky case by case situation, but just for stable account perspective, that is the process that we require.
And I think for those who are on tonight, and then also, we when we address the special needs trust next week, it's an attorney that's actually given that presentation, and this is something too that she could address as to how you deal with the stable account, the special needs trust, and the probate.
Yes, I will say that the attorneys know all about the probate court, because that is their job. So they know a lot about the rules of obtaining guardianship for somebody that requires it, the process of going through that. It is a lengthy process. I know a little bit about that just from my own personal experience, but in general, the stable account program is, designed to, there's a lot of individuals that have stable accounts that will always need someone to help them out. So we want to make sure that those parents, those guardians, the rep payees, they have access to that. But in terms of, obtaining those assets, those funds that are, quote, left over when the account holder dies, there is a legal requirement to go through the probate court. So we encourage the families to look into that as well. But echoing Patty, the special needs trust attorney will definitely be able to answer those questions as well.
I have a few other questions that were in the chat box. I also see, Eunice, I see your hand raised too. Um, let me go ahead and are you going to ask your question, Eunice, or do you want to type it in the chat box? We're okay with either way.
Can I ask it?
Mhm.
It's based on the same topic about um well, okay, first of all, what is an ALR? And based on, like, in my situation, I'm a single parent. I have a child with special needs, but then I also have another child who would, in the event that I pass, she would help with her brother. So if I set up a stable account for him, should should she be added as well, so that if I pass, then she wouldn't have to go through all the legal process to get access to his account for him?
That's a good question. So if you were to set up the stable account for your child that is eligible, so the child with the disability, you would be the ALR. So you would go through our enrollment process and you would actually set it up on behalf of your child with the disability. So you would remain the ALR. And this is a list of, obviously, who fits in that category. Parent is, should be number one, to be honest. But and when you set up the account, there's only one beneficiary on the account. So the funds can only be used for the person with the disability. And then also there's only one ALR on the account. So the enrollment process, the verification process, the logins, there's only one login. So currently in your situation, I would recommend you be the ALR. And if you were to pass away, whether you set it up in your will, or if, just kind of an agreement, your other child or another family member could go through the probate court process of getting to be their guardian. Once they're the new guardian, they would get access to the stable account as the new ALR.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Great
Absolutely.
question. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I could also add something too, because especially with transition, just kind of going back to my Uncle Bill. So, he's in his 70s and he's in a new, ICF situation. So he actually is in an organizational ALR. So there's organizational ALRs, and there's no information on this slide deck about that, but there's a lot of organizations in Ohio that serve in the capacity that they manage multiple stable accounts, because the residents, they oversee, they take care of the residents. Even though my Uncle Bill has family local and he has his own guardian, the organization is the ALR. So in some cases, if you have a child with an existing stable account and they move to a setting like a group home setting, an ICF, a residential home, or they have a RET payee taking care of them, there's a process that they can go through that they can then get access to the stable account, exactly as we just mentioned with the change of guardianship. It would be a change of ALR in this situation.
Let's see. The next question, we're going to shift to some work questions.
Okay, wonderful.
Can you work? The first question is, can you work part-time and still have the additional wages applied to your maximum per year, or do you have to work full-time?
It depends on what it's interesting because, minimum wage is going up so much and a lot of work situations are paying a lot more than they used to, which is amazing. But I know that for Medicaid, I think Medicaid does have limitations on what you're allowed to bring in for income. I think it's income based, but as long as you're putting your paycheck into your stable account within that 14,580 bracket, we don't require you to provide information about whether you're part-time or full-time. So it's really up to your situation. As long as it's underneath that 14,580, making the total account for 2024 32,580. So it's really how you want to disperse your funds into the account.
If you have more, if you want the questions as we address them, if you have more to add or more questions that you have with what Aliane is providing, or more, if you need more additional details, just either raise your hand or put it in the text. We want to make sure we're answering your questions. So then the other is, so if my son deposits his check into his stable account, does he get the state of Ohio tax deduction?
Yes, he does. Yep. So anyone that just did their taxes in Ohio, you probably saw on there, did you contribute to Ohio's ABLE plan, parentheses, stable account? So anybody that makes contributions into a stable account in Ohio, you could qualify for the tax deduction. And for Ohio, it's 4,000 if you max out the 18,000. So that's even if parents are maxing out the contribution, when you go through to your taxes, you would, put that in there. It is the same amount. I'm pretty sure it is the same amount for the 529 college savings plan as well. So if you're a parent that has a stable account and a 529 college savings plan for two different children, I think you're only eligible for that one tax deduction. So that is another question we get. But yes, if you are putting your paycheck in your stable account, you have to obviously hit the max out, but you can still put in on your taxes as well.
And then we have another question here, as who determines the qualified disability expenses for a stable account? Who determines that?
That terminology is basically assigned to all ABLE programs from the IRS. So that is just a general term that all ABLE programs follow. It's as broad as can be for a reason, but the IRS oversees the program. So they have always assigned that, every expense should be a qualified disability expense. And then this sentence is the definition of what that is. So.
And I know you can call that 800 number. I did that. I called because my son wanted something specifically. And I asked them if this would qualify. And they said, is it something that will help his quality of life? Is it something that it would improve his quality of life? And if the answers are yes. Now, I understand there is certain things that cannot be used. They're specific. Can you state what those are? There's probably a specific, like, alcohol is or isn't, right? Anything like that, Alina?
Well, I would say, it's hard to answer that. But I will say that I know that the funds in the account should be spent on the person, the beneficiary, the person with the disability. So if you're, going on vacation, don't be using your funds on paying for everyone else's ticket. Don't make donations to, don't donate to, as much as donating's great. Don't use your funds on a donation, for somebody, or, those types of things. So we try not to get specific to, the yes or no answers, but it's more of, especially because if you're putting your SSI funds in a stable account, those funds are no longer SSI funds, they're stable account funds. And a lot of times, especially if you have a rep payee, or if somebody's overseeing and helping out with the account, they have to be mindful of the record keeping. So that's another thing, is that if your SSI funds in your stable account, just be mindful of those spending. We don't require you to ask permission, or send in a form like, hey, can I take these funds out to use it on this? We don't require that at all. We really just encourage the individual and the families to be mindful of that qualified disability rule, expense rule.
And that does lead to another question we had is, do we have to keep receipts for all things we buy with the stable account funds?
I would encourage, to kind of, I would encourage, we say it is important to do that. The Visa card, as I mentioned, is the best way to track those expenses. It's set up on the back end to get, statements and record keeping as any debit card would be. You can see line by line item there. Obviously, third-party checks are great to say, oh, I paid my rent, or I paid my AEP bill with a check. And then if you're taking money out of your stable account and putting it into, let's say your checking account at PNC, and then you're using your PNC account and, spending it on a vacation, you might want to keep record that way, just in case if something were to ever happen, that's an important thing. But if you've got your Visa card, you don't have to keep receipts that way, because the Visa card is the way that it tracks it on the back end.
Yeah, that is very handy with the Visa card.
Yes.
Let's see, hold on, let me get so a question I have, and something we've come across over the course of time, because we've had a stable account, and luckily I did open a stable account, because something that happened with us was, and I don't know if this has changed since our event, but so our son had a job, he had a 401k, and it was growing very nicely, and then he changed jobs. And we got a call that his 401k, because he was no longer working for that employer, became an asset. And when I tried to find out, luckily we did have a stable account open, so I didn't have to worry about opening an account. But trying to get that money over into the stable account was quite difficult, in the sense it took time. We had to cash out one, get into his checking, and then roll it into or not roll it in, then send it to the stable account. Is there any change in that? Like when someone, if they have a 401k and change a job, or stable account working at all with the 401k with businesses or anything like that, Elena?
We're getting so many more questions about that, which is a positive, that there are a lot of individuals that are working and able to, have access to a 401k, especially with retirement. To put money into a 401k, there isn't a direct process to transfer that out in. Same thing with if mom and dad have an IRA and they want to, leave it for their child, there's not a direct process with direct deposit into the account. You would have to, as you mentioned, take it out, transfer it, deposit it in a certain way, especially if it's as long as it's within that contribution amount. But we are, I think for individuals to be able to have access to their company's 401k, to be able to have that option, that's really important. But I don't know how it falls in with, as you mentioned, how it's an asset, how that plays into if Medicaid or SSI looks at that, and how that all kind of plays in, because would be separate from a stable account. But we're definitely trying to learn more about that, just because it is something that has been coming up a lot. So.
Yeah, it's when you change employers, or you're no longer in that employment with that employer that has the 401k, and you leave to go to another company, then the 401k is with the employer that you are no longer employed with. That 401k, that's what becomes the asset. Now, if you go to another job and you can roll it into a 401k with the current employer, you may be okay. But if you don't have that option, um, that's where it becomes sticky.
Yeah.
There was another question. Let's see, hold on. We had, if you contribute to a 401k, do you qualify for the additional earnings contribution? That's a good question.
Oh, that is a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I can definitely look into that and possibly email you, Patty, and just, if you want to, I also can send the slide deck out to anyone. And if there's any questions that need a little bit more to get a clearer answer, I can also email like bullet points out and save that as well. So I can take a picture of that and get back to you.
Yeah, that was a good question. I didn't even think about that one. So, but
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
if you can, yeah, you can send it to me and I can send it out to everybody that's on the meeting tonight, or just send it out. We also put information into our Google Salt Drive, and I can upload any forms that you send to that they can reference. Um, there is another question here. I opened a stable account 2 years ago for my daughter, but didn't receive a stable Visa card. How would we go about getting that for her?
Great question. So when you log into your stable accounts on your dashboard, there is a little widget. I don't have access to the dashboards, but there is a widget where a little icon where you can actually initiate the opening of the Visa card, and then they would mail that to you. So that is done. There is actually a separate log. So once you create the Visa card, it's actually going to have a new login. Vestwell is our account manager, and TrueLink is the group that manages the Visa card. So as I mentioned, it's optional, but there's a little area on your dashboard. It'll be mailed to you. And I think I mentioned this, but when you do a transfer of funds, there's about a 3 to 5 day window for the funds to appear on the Visa card. Patty, you're shaking your head, so I think that is
Hmm.
accurate. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that is obviously to number one, to protect the funds in the account, to verify the funds. And then, because this is not a typical savings account, it's an investment account, it's kind of like a sale of the funds, if you will. So
And you can elaborate on this a little bit more with the funds on the card, we used to use it for like if say our son was going to camp or was going to be separated from us, we would put so much on and telling this is how much you have on. So he could buy food, he could buy, maybe something a souvenir or something. He could buy whatever while he's on his trip, but it was limited. We could limit that card amount. So it wasn't like he had access to the full amount.
yep, yep. There's definitely and that's a good good you mentioned that, because I know that some families are able to, do exactly what you mentioned. You can control merchants, if you can say you can only spend $200 this month, and then, there's other protections. You can't get cash out of it. You can't overdraft it. And it's important that it's not directly linked to the account, because this just goes mentioning is that, with how everything is so digitized, and, there's so many scams out there. There's so much fraud going on with every social media and banking and financial institutions. So our program is really trying to up our security. There's actually a new update where we require two-factor authentication to get access to your account. To make sure that the funds are not liquidated if for some reason your debit card was compromised, that's a protection that we have in place as well. So even though there's a 3 to 5 day lag of transferring funds, it's kind of a positive protect the account as well. So
Yeah, with the funds, you can do it like it's like they're in individual, like you can have a choice of different levels of, I guess you call it, is it risk? I guess I don't know what term you use. Is it different levels of risk? You can choose to do different levels, but when you go to take money out, there's time that it needs to transfer into, cash to go into the card.
yes, yep.
So yeah, you have the different levels there in front. So that's something that is very helpful if you so with us, a stable account, I always told our son, keep it as like, it's like an emergency fund or for, that, um, if you're living on your own for those expenses, I guess you would say. But then we would, when he would go away, switch, move some over ahead of time, like you said, like 3 days ahead of time or so to be ready for that vacation or whatever for him to spend the money. Let's see. We do have another question here. If our child gets several checks for birthdays or Christmas, do we have to mail the checks in to deposit them into the stable account, or is it easier to cash the checks and electronically transfer the funds from our linked account? Good question.
So I would probably say, gosh, it's whatever easiest for you. I mean, if you have the account set up already, you can, let me go to the slide. So you can transfer. So if those checks that were written out to your son, however you're depositing those checks, obviously you can't mail those checks into stable account because they wouldn't have any information on the check about his stable account or your stable account. For him. So it would probably make sense to deposit it into an external checking or savings account and then transfer it in that way through direct deposit. I don't know if there's another question with that. I think there was two options, but
So it was, do they deposit them into the checks into the stable account when they receive them, or is it easier for them to cash them and then just transfer them from the account that's linked to the stable account?
yes, I would definitely cash them and then transfer them into through the EFT. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong slide. That didn't make a lot of sense. Through the EFT transfer. So transferring from an external checking or savings account is probably the easiest way. As I mentioned, we do have the gifting feature, but obviously that would need to be shared before somebody was writing a check to your son. But this is another way that somebody can, use their debit card or their, checking or savings account to make a contribution, online. So that's another option as well. And that would be directly deposited through the gifting feature right into the stable accounts.
And again, that you emphasize that you cannot even the gifting is lumped with your contribution. So you can't go over, correct? You can't go over the amount. Yeah, the limit. Even if someone can't like so if you've done your full 32,000, if you're employed and you've done your full 32,580, if someone contributes, then what happens if it goes over? How do you what does they do then?
So it would reject it. So the contribution amounts, these are just for the year. So that these are the annual contributions. So if you've got 60 grand in your stable account and let's say Travis has 60 grand in his account and he has not made any contributions so far for this year. And he's like, you know what, I'm going to start making contributions for 2024. He can only contribute $18,000. So even if, he's working or somebody gifts him that amount, as long as it's below these two contributions just for the annual contribution of 2024, then you're good. But if somebody does gift you in your stable account and you're already at capacity of this 32,580, the system's going to reject it because you're at the max contribution. And the system, the portal, the dashboard I keep referencing, has a great way that you can see where you're at too. So you can see all your contributions made from SSI or your Able to Work initiative, which is your paycheck, or your general contributions. So depending on how it comes in. So you do have a great way to oversee where you're at with contributions. But if somebody randomly just makes a contribution to your stable account and you're already at the contribution cap, is going to reject it.
Let's see here. Hold on, let me read this. If the Christmas checks are in my daughter's name, would those checks potentially put her over the 2,000 max for SSI if we cashed them, then did an EFT? I don't know if you can see the chat box, but that was the last question that came up.
Okay. I saw it and then it went away. Let me pull this up again. I don't know what happened to the, I keep, oh, here we go. Hold on. Let's see. If the
Brian,
Christmas,
yeah.
yeah, if the Christmas checks are my daughter's name, would those checks potentially put her over the 2000 max? It's an FT. So if you're receiving SSI and you're worried about the $2,000 asset limit is what they refer to it as, even if you at some point have cash money in your checking account and you're over that $2,000, as long as you transfer it into a stable account, it's not like SSI immediately sees that within the second you deposit and you're like, oh, oh no, I'm over limit. I don't know when SSI does reviews. I don't know the process with that just because that's not our office. But as long as you're putting those Christmas checks eventually into the stable account through EFT, then they're protected for sure. And we see that a lot. I mean, just because you can directly deposit your paycheck in your stable account doesn't mean that all our account holders do that. Our account holders might have it set up so that it goes to a checking account at Huntington, and then they transfer those funds into their stable account. But as long as you know that the end result, as long as you know that they should be in the stable account and those are protected, then you won't have to worry about that $2,000 limit.
And just as a reminder, again, next week we're going to be talking to an attorney about the special needs trust. I am actually copying these questions down, so we have them as well for to give to her as well next week, especially the ones that concerning just the overlap of things that could cause an issue regarding the SGA or the limits. Can you put the contact slide back up?
Yes, absolutely.
We had one question asking about contacting you directly. But I know I have called that 800 number and they have been very, very helpful. But I will let you address about, contacting you directly or how if someone has any specific questions going off of this presentation.
Yeah, so our office, the Ohio Charter's office, we do not have internal access to any accounts. Our account manager, Veswell, is the one that is managing the customer service line. So if you are on enrollment or if you're calling to say, oh, what's my balance? Or, I mailed in a check, what's the status of it? Please call the customer service line. Obviously, if you contact our office, we'll get you in touch with them. We talk with them all the time. They're great. But specifically, the Ohio Charter's office, a stable account team within Ohio, you're more than welcome to email this email address. And then, as I mentioned, I'm going to email this slide deck to Patty. And then I'm going to chat with the team this week. I'm going to go through the questions again, just to make sure I didn't miss anything. But that specific question about the 401k, I think it's a great question, and it's never been asked before. And I think that would just be something to get good guidance on. So I'll hopefully be able to email that also to Patty. And then Patty, if you want, you can forward that out to your community or whoever's on the call, whatever you want to do with that. So
yeah, that would be great. Thank
okay.
you.
Of course.
If you are looking at, we put it in there too, about next week, when we have the hybrid session. It is in person and it is virtual, so we can attend both. If you're asking, when you click on that link to, like, you would sign up for the virtual, there is a question in there. Will you be attending virtually or in person? The in-person is at the Warren C. Young Center, and the address is there at the 801 Drake Road, Lebanon, Ohio. That's the in-person side, but we'll be streaming in also via Zoom at the same time. So it's, there is a question in there if you're going to attend in person or virtually. Is there any other questions for Elena? I think we if I missed a question, please let me know. I was trying to keep a track of them. We've had all good experience so far. I mean, I think from the time back when you first opened up, what was it, 2016? I think it was the following year. So we opened a stable account and it's been very helpful in many circumstances. So, And you'll hear more about that next week too, but it's been very helpful.
Good. We like to hear that. We like to hear. It's definitely a wonderful resource at some point along the way for an individual or a loved one. But obviously, if you're really looking at long-term planning, it's good to set up the account, whether you max out or you put in $100 each year. That money has the opportunity to grow, but it's just a really great way that it's helped a lot of people feel empowered, have the ability to work, and to have kind of a safety net that they never had before, before able accounts existed. So we're here to help. We're a resource, and we want to make sure more people know about it. So we
Yeah.
appreciate you. We really appreciate your work, Patty, and everything you're doing too. So
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to make sure if everybody, understood what the stable account is and how to use it. It's been such, I mean, when your child, as they grow, like you said, you get money gifted to you. Your child could get, if they're working, they could get a bonus. There's so many things that can put you over that SGA threshold. And this is just such a helpful tool to use when you have those certain things that come and it's like, oh no, what are we going to do? We have the stable account to fall back on for some of those excess funds. Let's see here. So they asked about the recording tonight. We do have it, and we did, Michelle put out there, we'll be putting it on YouTube. You have to give me a few days, but it will be up on our YouTube, our SALT channel. So I'm going to stop the recording just in case somebody wants to reach out or talk without it being recorded, or ask a question. So 1 second while I stop that recording. But thank you, before I stop the recording, thank you, Lainey, again for your presentation and all the information, and everybody that attended tonight, and for your questions. They were great questions. So 1 second while I close this, close the recording. 1 second.